Welcome to the Dumpster Fire Project, a podcast that memorializes the fantastic and oftentimes catastrophic entrepreneurial journey of two unremarkable middle-aged men. Welcome back, everybody. Episode number 5 of the Dumpster Fire Project. Today's episode, we talk with Detective Sgt. David Miranda of the Lovington Police Department. Detective Miranda has been a police officer since 2011. Prior to that, he worked on Wall Street, one of the select few with a spot on the New York Stock Exchange. Detective Miranda is a really cool guy. I've known him for a long time, and I want to thank him for coming on the show, being our second guest ever on the Dumpster Fire Project. We had a great conversation. He's a really cool dude, and his story about how he went from Wall Street to police officer in his 40s, I think can really serve to get you fired up about doing something that you're passionate about. And he said something during the interview where he had mentioned that sometimes your passion finds you. He didn't originally plan on becoming a police officer. So I think you'll take a lot of value out of this, and it's a really good story. So I want to thank Detective Miranda again for coming on the show. Without further ado, Murray, take it away.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Dumpster Fire Project. We're in another special episode dealing with the pandemic. We're really pumping these out now. We've got a little bit of extra downtime, and we've got some really amazing guests that have so kindly jumped on here with us to tell us their stories and how they're dealing with it and how it all ties into just entrepreneurial, being mentally strong in challenging times like this. So it's another good one for you. I'll let Eric take it over from here and introduce our guest.
All right, thanks, Murray. So it's like Murray said, this is, I think all of our episodes are specials at this point, so who's keeping track? This is going to be a good one. My pleasure to introduce a very good friend of mine that I've known for a long time. We've been through a lot of battles in the trenches. We'll probably talk about some of that when we get off topic, which tends to happen. So, Detective Sgt. David Miranda, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it. How the hell are you?
I'm great, and thank you, gentlemen, for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, just to get started a little bit, just to let everybody know, I've talked about my kind of side hustle where I'm trying to provide law enforcement training and training for prosecutors. As a prosecutor, we know each other very well. We work together. We've done a lot of cases, a lot of trials, a lot of meeting in the office on Saturdays and all that fun stuff. But you actually have a really cool story about how you became a police officer. I always thought it was like one of the coolest stories because most of the police officers I know are very passionate about what they do. A lot of guys get into it very young. But I met you, and you had a career before being a police officer. So I wanted you to, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about what you used to do and how you became a police officer.
Well, I grew up, born and raised in New York City. Parents got divorced at a young age, so we moved around a lot. Ended up as a teenager in New York City, downtown, in the late 70s, and really had no direction. Didn't know what I wanted to do. And my father was a great walker, and he would take us for walks on Sunday mornings. And in those days, you could go down to the financial district in New York City on a Sunday, and you wouldn't see a soul for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. It's not like it is today. Wall Street's opened up a lot. And somehow I kind of got interested and fixated on the New York Stock Exchange. And by about 1979, 1980, I visited the visitors gallery of the New York Stock Exchange, which, for those not familiar with Wall Street, it's changed now. It's not really what you see on CNBC. It's more like a TV studio. Back in that day, it was an open outcry auction market. Obviously, you didn't have the automation you have today. You didn't even have cell phones, things like that. It was a private club of 1,366 members, and having a seat or a membership on the New York Stock Exchange at that time and for the previous 100 years was better than having a Harvard MBA. It was a very exclusive club. And I remember going down to the visitors gallery and looking through the glass and thinking to myself, I don't know what those guys are doing down there, but that's what I want to do. So at that point, the passion kind of grabbed me. And, as I said, it was a very exclusive club. And so at that point, I had been in college, and a friend of mine knew someone in the human resources department at the New York Stock Exchange. And they said, well, the way in is to get a job as a runner. And it's basically a messenger on the floor. And I put my application in, and I was told there's going to be a 3-year wait, because that's how you made your way in. Unless your parents owned a firm or you had an inn, that's the way you did it. And my father, who was a great entrepreneur and did a lot of different things, said, well, guess what? You have to make best friends with that lady who's accepting applications. And I would call her once a week, every week. And I remember, due to a personal situation with my first wife, I remember she called me and said, guess what? Your application is at the top. And I said, I can't accept right now. So I had to kind of put that off, but I would call her once a week. I even sent her flowers once. Not in a romantic way, just kind of, and she said, my husband hasn't even done that. So I became her best friend. And when I called her back, when I resolved my personal situation, she said, guess what? Your application just moved from the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile. You come down and see me on Monday. And I did, and got a job as a runner on the floor, which is basically just delivering slips of paper, which were trade confirmations, from the trading post to where the broker booths were on the perimeter of the floor. And that's how you started. And I hustled at that, busted my ass for only 3 months, and I got picked up by a specialist firm, which they used to make markets and stocks on the floor. And the specialist was kind of like the center of the floor. If you wanted to trade in IBM, you had to go to Post 5, Section E, and deal with the IBM specialist. That's the only place, if you wanted to buy or sell IBM shares on the New York Stock Exchange, that you could do it. So I started that way.
Wow.
Was getting coffees and lunches for the brokers and the trading assistants, and worked my way up to the front. Got my seat on the exchange. Started in '86, got my seat in '97, and I was there until 2007.
So you got to tell me what it was like, because guys like Murray and I, our only perception of Wall Street is what we see on the TV or like Wolf of Wall Street, that sort of thing. How crazy is it?
It kind of like police work. You go from absolute boredom to sheer terror within a couple seconds. So it kind of prepared me for police work, because you could be standing there doing a crossword puzzle, and if there's news out in one of your stocks, or I remember I traded a staffing company, and it was a startup and led by a very dynamic guy, and true story. And all of a sudden, it was a quiet Friday afternoon. All of a sudden, I get one seller in my trading crowd, 2 sellers, and they have size for sale. I mean, hundreds of thousands of shares, which at that time was a lot. And I didn't know what was going on. There was no news out in the stock. There was no earnings. The market was quiet that day. And little did I know that he had been arrested for soliciting a prostitute the night before in the state down south. And these guys knew it, but I didn't know it. And so sometimes you're kind of playing against the house.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of things happen. You have to shift gears very quickly.
That's awesome. So you said you did that until what, about 97?
No, I was on the floor from 86 to 2007 due to the emerging of trading algorithms and trading in pennies or decimals rather than trading in eighths. Kind of took our profit model away. So my firm just began letting brokers go, letting traders go, starting in about 05. And I survived a lot of rounds of layoffs, but eventually I think we had 68 partners at the peak, and we went out of business in 08, I think, or 09, with basically no partners. The business model just went away. It's the equivalent of being a buggy whip manufacturer when the Model T came out. Your business model is done.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah, it went automated. It went electronic. It was decimalized and trading algorithms. So that's why the trading floor you see now has maybe a couple dozen people on it. It's basically a TV studio. Back in the day, there was 3,000, 4,000 people on the floor. It was like kind of what you see maybe in Oliver Stone's first Wall Street movie. It was
Wow.
a very exciting place to work.
So basically, what we see now is just kind of they just do
It,
that for show for TV.
100%, yeah.
Wow, I
It's
didn't know that.
unfortunate, but it just times evolved.
That's crazy. Okay, so it's 2007, 2008. You're
Um,
how do you go from that to ending up with a guy like from Michigan in Lovington, New Mexico?
well, unfortunately, the timing was bad because you may remember 2008,
Yeah.
2009 was the terrible recession.
Yep.
So here I am out of work with a very narrow scope of experience on Wall Street. I did one specific thing. It's not like I was an MBA or an analyst, which, it's kind of like being an accountant. No, I had one focus and that's gone. So I was out of work for about a year and a half because for every job that opened up, there was a couple hundred applicants. So I was, up against some stiff competition. I don't have an MBA. Since 9/11, I had kind of taken more of an admiration to law enforcement and kind of public service. We were 3 blocks away from 9/11, so I saw a lot of stuff. But that coupled with being the victim of a burglary in 2009, kind of like I had heard about things outside of New York where you could go to police academies and kind of self-sponsor your way through. You didn't have to be under 35 years of age, and you didn't even have to be working for a police agency. You could just kind of go, and if you passed the background and all that stuff, you could get into a police academy. And I knew a guy who did it down in Florida and was a sheriff's deputy. I'm like, well, so I began looking at states, and then, a friend of a friend of a friend knew the deputy chief here in Lovington, New Mexico. I called him. He said, you know what? There's a job waiting. The police academy is 17 miles down the road. If you can get through it, you got a job. So kind of on a whim, I took a plane to New Mexico. I'd only been through here once on a train in 1975. Didn't know anybody in the state and tried out at the police academy at the age of 47. And to my surprise, I made the assessment.
So I just taught the new recruits a couple weeks ago at the police academy, and I saw how they had to do push-ups and sit-ups through like all the breaks, and I was like, "There's no way. I'm 37.
Yes.
There's no way I could do that."
Yeah, I lost 30 pounds in the police academy. I think I mean, besides just the push-ups between class breaks, we did 12,000. That's besides the usual, physical training and all that stuff that you do. They have a 24-hour day one, so it's they're preparing you for a paramilitary type of an organization, which is what a police department is. Greatest experience of my life, probably. Wasn't easy, but I basically came out here with one suitcase, no car, and I didn't know a soul, and just showed up.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
crazy. It's crazy too because I think what year did you start? When did you come out of the academy?
2011.
Okay, and I got here in 2011 as well, and we had similar stories because I never in a million years thought I'd end up in New Mexico from Michigan, but it was kind of the same thing. Friend of a friend, like they'll hire you, and I couldn't get a job delivering pizzas to the DA's office in Michigan, let alone working there. So I did the same thing, but I think I packed 2 suitcases and got on the plane and came down. So it's crazy.
That's the great thing about this state. It's the 5th largest geographically, but it's got only 1 million people in it. So you can move up very quickly. And, a couple lucky breaks and a bunch of people leaving the department. I made detective after 6 months on the street.
Yeah.
But I always liked writing, and I write well. So the chief saw that. And, investigations and detective work is a lot of writing. You write a lot of search warrants, a lot of criminal complaints. So that's one thing people don't realize about police work is how much writing you do.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of guys don't have that skill. And as a prosecutor, that would drive me crazy. So I always appreciated it when I had good report writing.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same bucket. I work for a medical manufacturer. I design surgical equipment, and you have the fun part where you actually get to design it, but there's so much paperwork you have to do for the FDA and the European regulating bodies. I mean, I tell everyone that you don't realize it. It's probably 85% paperwork and maybe 15% actually sitting down and designing and testing. So I definitely feel you guys.
Yep.
So question, there are definitely two different things going on there, but I could potentially see some similarities. So were there any tools you could take from Wall Street into the new career?
Being able to shift gears very quickly, I think, was one thing that I realized immediately. Because the crap hits the fan pretty quickly in either business. I don't view myself as an aggressive guy or, testosterone type guy, but being a trader on the floor in an open outcry auction market and being a cop on the street or interviewing a murderer, typically draws a certain type of individual, which I don't view myself as. So I was kind of surprised how I ended up here. But, as they say, a great Wall Street trader once told me, sometimes you don't find the passion finds you. I had never viewed myself as a police officer. I was out of work looking for a job, but for me to uproot and move 2,000 miles across the country and reinvent at the age of 47 kind of surprised even me. And I think, but my family and friends kind of were like, what's this guy thinking? But I was lucky to have a father who did that, and kind of an interesting guy. He was a Juilliard trained classical violinist and played in the Boston Symphony for a while, and he just walked away from it and did a lot of different things, started up companies. When he died in 1990, was a contractor in New York City, had started his fifth company. So I think I learned from him that doesn't matter, your age doesn't really matter. The ability to kind of like try to reinvent and keep an open mind about, let the passion find you. Don't close it off. Don't close your mind off to it.
Yeah, that's awesome too, because when you told me that, when I asked you to be on here, and I was like, I love that, because as I worked with you, I could tell that you were very passionate about police work, because there's some guys that get close to retirement and they just kind of just showing up, counting down the days. But with you, it was, you didn't have to come into the office and meet with me after hours on Saturdays and stuff like that, but you genuinely cared about the cases, you genuinely cared about the community and making a difference. So when did you find that? Was it something that happened right away, or was it something that kind of slowly developed?
It kind of slowly developed. I liked initially being on the street, being a cop. Then they moved me into detectives, and I kind of didn't want to do it. Kept working the street, but kind of developed that, Wall Street was a lot of fun. There were some years I made quite a bit of money, ate in great restaurants and took some nice vacations. But it's going to sound corny to say, but the most impressionable thing that I've taken away from my past 9 years in law enforcement is you actually get to help people, and you see a lot of bad stuff. You have to, kind of be there with your victims. You sometimes even bring them to court. But you find yourself doing some good in the world, and it's kind of like, I hate to say it, but you're giving back. So that's been kind of the most rewarding part. I know a lot of people say that, but I think, cops become cops to drive fast and wear guns and wear the uniform. But I think if you allow yourself to kind of get into the role of the job, the rewarding part is helping people. Because if you're not helping people and getting satisfaction out of that, you're certainly not doing it for the money. And you're not doing it for all the bad stuff you see. So if you're not getting that out of it, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. I would get kind of depressed on a Friday afternoon because, the work week is over. I actually look forward to Monday. And I remember that on Wall Street too. And towards the end on Wall Street, when things weren't going well, I kind of, that left me. So when I found that, doing what I'm doing now, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember what this is like. I actually like my job.
It's crazy. It's crazy how similar our stories are, because when I look back to probably what was it, like 2013, 2014, 2015, when I was doing all the drug cases. Like
Yeah.
that was the most fun that I'd ever had. And that same thing, like Friday, I'm like, why does the work week got to be over? Like, let's come in the office on Saturday and get ready. We got some trials coming up. Like, it was just, I didn't think of it as working, just something I was passionate about. But then, when I be careful what you wish for, when I became chief deputy and I had to start supervising and doing all the crazy things, I just got really burnt out. And then kind of towards the end, I realized that you can't do that kind of work if you lose the passion for it. And that's when I decided that it was time for me to make a switch. And then shortly after, I started thinking about, let's do something that brings that passion back. And that's kind of how I got into the side hustle of the law enforcement and the prosecutor training, because that's what I really enjoy doing. So I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah. And if there's anything I could change, it would probably be, kind of don't burn that flame too fast. Maybe take a few more weekends for yourself, because you don't want to get burned out. Because I enjoy what I do. I would hate to get burned out, because being a cop and being burned out and not liking what you do, I mean, we do see examples of that. It's not a good situation to be in.
Yeah, I was working on a presentation for the DA's conference that was supposed to be in like a couple of weeks. Of course, it got canceled, but it was going to be on the topic of attorney burnout and how, you see it at the DA's office. It's you move up the ladder quickly, and you fail to kind of set boundaries. And that's kind of what happened with me. It was nonstop, no vacations, constantly in it. And that's kind of, if I could go back and redo it, I would, set some more boundaries and say, okay, I'm not on call this week. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to go camping. I never did that. And then, almost 10 years later, it took a huge effect on me.
I agree. So, I would probably have tempered that a little bit more. Not that I'm getting burned out now, but it just kind of, one of my best instructors in the police academy always used to tell us, find friends outside of police work. Cops only hang out with cops or maybe nurses, but have friends in other fields, have hobbies, because when you retire, that's why, a lot of cops retire. They hit the bottle, or, the suicide rate is very high. So
for sure,
it's something to be aware of as you're going down that road. But we get so passionate about it, we find the watching football on the couch on Sunday as boring, not as a recreation.
Oh yeah, I noticed that as soon as I made the switch to the city attorney's office, the first couple of weeks, I'm like, oh, this is great. I get to come in, I get to read my work, I get to, take time. I got a week to prepare this memo, and then a year and a half later, it's like, okay, what? I need a call. Let's go. We're gonna go do a drug bust here. What's going on? And let's go do something.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's a certain type of personality. I don't know. Maybe you need that adrenaline rush, or but for sure, you need that. You need that passion. You need that fire. Otherwise, it's not going to be good.
Well, I feel bad, Murray. If you have any questions, jump in, because I feel like I'm hogging the microphone here. I have one before I forget, because I lose my train of thought easily these days. I wanted to ask you, just kind of a side note, since we're right in the middle of the COVID-19 craziness, what are you seeing on your end from a law enforcement perspective? What is it like being on the front lines battling this thing?
Well, we don't get the luxury of social distancing. Obviously, we've taken all the precautions we can. The department's been really great about, putting sanitizer up. We've got all our PPEs and everything like that. I see a lot of people staying home. I think even in this neck of the woods, people are starting to take it seriously. I have family back in New York where it's really bad. I think it's an interesting social experiment. Our crime has dropped quite a bit. We're minimizing traffic stops and things like that to avoid contact, but at the same time, the crime has dropped. I worry about, with another month being told to stay home, you're going to start to see domestic violence type of stuff. You're not only going to have the corona babies, you're going to have the corona divorces.
Yeah, for sure. I'm working at home right now as well, so it's already becoming challenging.
Yeah. And it's funny, from a Wall Street perspective, it kind of woke up. I hadn't made a trade in over 10 years. And I saw what was happening. Not that I'm giving out investment advice, but I actually have a small portfolio besides my retirement account, and I actually went down to my broker's office. Caught it a little early, I think, but about 2-3 weeks ago, and
Wow,
dramatically altered my portfolio.
that's
And
awesome.
a couple of guys have come out, and it's horrible, but you still have to manage your money. You go back to the recession of 2008-9, the stock market crash of 87. I personally think it's a tremendous buying opportunity for certain sectors. You just have to be able to hold on for a couple of years.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question. Without giving any like official advice, just your own personal thoughts. Like, what do you see? What's going to happen to our economy when this is all said and done?
Well, I mean, the time to buy is when there's fear in people's eyes, right? That's the great thing about trading on the floors. You're shouting, arguing over a quarter or an eighth of a point, which is 12 and a half cents. But you're talking about hundreds of thousands of shares, but there was the psychology involved. And as a trader, not that I'm the best trader in the world, but when you see that fear and that desperation and people throwing in the towel, that's when you're like, you know what, this may not be the bottom, but maybe we're close and maybe this is a time to buy. Exclusive of oil, which is kind of a different scenario going on right now. I think for certain sectors, it's a great buying opportunity. Airlines are too big to fail, just like the automakers were back 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So there's certain areas that, it's going to be hard for a while, but if you've got, the time and you can sleep at night, there's amazing opportunities.
Murray, any follow up on that?
Yeah, not necessarily the stock part of it, but I think you touched on a lot of good points there. I did have one question about the move you made. What was your biggest learning lesson?
You don't have to make a lot of money to get satisfaction out of life, and I know it's kind of hackneyed, but I tried certain other jobs when I was kind of in between my two major careers, and it's not good if you're not happy with what you're doing. The money's not worth it, and it frays away at the edges of your life. So just be receptive, because I never thought in a million years I'd be a cop, let alone at the age of 47, when I was shown that it was possible, but I might have to travel 2,000 miles and end up getting divorced and leave my family to do it. I kind of let it happen, to the surprise of everybody, including myself. So to kind of keep an open mind and be receptive, I'm full of, used old expressions, but, if opportunity knocks, you've got to be listening. So those kind of things tap us on the shoulder as we go throughout our life. The question is, are you going to be receptive and run with it, or kind of stay in your kind of drab but safe and secure existence? It's a tough choice, and it's not for everyone.
Yeah, that's
sure.
good
Yeah,
advice.
that's very well put. We say something similar on here a lot, so it's good to hear somebody else come on with some fresh stories and explain it in a different manner. So yeah, I've really appreciated everything you've shared.
Yeah, one of the things that Murray and I had talked about, we've when this first happened and we did a quick episode on here, I went from like the week before this happened to thinking like on top of the world, like this is starting to happen. I've been putting a lot of energy into booking gigs. I was doing the police academy. I had booked several agencies to do some training. I even got accepted to speak at the Overland Expo in Tucson, or no, Flagstaff, and all of it in like 2 weeks is like gone. So I'm like,
Right.
well, I have to rethink this.
Yeah. No, it's just a pause. It's not the end of it. It's just a pause. I mean,
I like that way of looking at it. I like that.
Like the stock market never goes straight up or straight down. It goes, up and down, but you got to look at the trend. So, you're going to have those little dips, those bad days. I saw my father start, and sometimes successfully, sometimes not, a lot of businesses and things like that. And you just don't give up. You keep trying.
Nice.
Yeah, so
Well
so
said.
true. We look at a lot of things on the business side, and that's the thing I definitely focus on. So that's awesome.
You got time for a quick story?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a good one. What do you
So,
got?
my father back in 1974 started up this, kind of rudimentary technology company. It was called a sound page back then, and they say research says that if you see something and hear it, like you remember 90% of it, as opposed to just seeing it and you remember 60% and just hearing it and you hear 30, you remember 30%. So he starts up this company in the living room of his house, and it was making these sound pages, and 3M made the machines, and Sony also made the machines. And I remember he found this old warehouse downtown New York. We put sheetrock up every day, put in carpets and all that, hired people, and but he's making no money. And all of a sudden, the president of Sony, Sony Japan, which at that time was a really big company, is going to visit him. So now it's like this is make or break, right? I mean, this is like entrepreneur 101. And I'll never forget, besides hiring people, temps for the day and everything like that, I remember he took a couple teenagers off the corner and he went and got a couple rolls of dimes. And he said, and this is before cell phones, he said, you go down to the corner phone booth and you call this number and you don't stop calling for the next half hour. So he timed it. So when the chairman of Sony walks in, or the president of Sony, the phones are ringing off the hook. So it's, total smoke and mirrors, but it worked. He got the contract.
That is awesome.
So sometimes you just got to cowboy it,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. So I want to share a story. It's going to be a little bit off topic, but I was thinking about it and I can't resist because maybe you remember this. This was several years ago. It was back when we were doing a lot of trials in the drug cases, and I'm at lunch with Kristen, who is now my wife, and it was busy day at lunch. Oftentimes the oil field's going strong, and you had called me, and we had a trial the next day, and you were asking me what you needed to bring from evidence, and for some reason I had like a bad signal, and it was like loud in the restaurant. So I'm on the phone and I'm yelling, "Bring the dope! You gotta bring the dope!" And you're like, "What?" And I'm like yelling, "Bring the dope! The ounce! You gotta bring the ounce of dope!" And I look at everybody in the restaurant is like staring at me.
Yeah, you could have been on the phone with your dealer.
Well, you did bring the dope, and we won. So
You were great in the courtroom. Your
Thanks.
visual aids were always a hit with the jury, and I think that's the focus of one of your podcasts or your episodes. But it won a lot of cases, and I learned a lot from you. We had some interesting cases and some interesting opponents, and quite a few are still in jail.
yeah, well, I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun doing that. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I loved it. So
Yeah.
thanks for letting me know that. How we doing on time, Murray?
We're good. We'll start to wrap it up here, but I find it very interesting to hear these stories just about Eric and all the good he's done, because to me he's that silly kid down the road that I grew up with. So it's always fun to hear these, like, oh yeah, he's out there working hard, getting it done.
Yeah.
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 To the point where I think you started wearing a concealed firearm. But
That's a whole another story right there. But yes,
that's a whole sidebar right there.
Yeah, I do believe I may be like the only attorney since the 1800s to carry a 9mm during a trial.
Well, but yeah, we learned a lot and we learned it quickly, and I think we were very lucky to end up where we did, because in my case, I didn't have a lot of years. I'm going up. My field training officer was 20 years younger than me, and he was a prick, and he used to get out in the morning. We'd go gas up, and I'd be riding in the passenger seat, learning in my final phase of field training officer, FTO. And he'd say, "Okay, get out and clean my windshield." Okay. And there's another time where, our police department has a urinal and a stall, and I'm at the urinal and I feel something on my shoe, and he's taken a leak from the stall onto my shoe. Now,
Oh, man.
the way I got past that is that he was that way with everybody. So I kind of reversed it and said, you know what? He's not treating me different because I'm 20 years older than him. He's being the same SOB to me as he was to everybody else. So I think the point I was trying to make is when I got here, I didn't have a lot of time. So maybe that also drove me because it's my second career and now I'm in my late 40s. But don't be afraid of the competition because you will find your niche. My niche happened to be writing and investigation, so I got picked for that. But whether in law enforcement, some guys, their passion is canine or drug recognition expert. Some guys live and die by doing DUIs. That's their thing. There is an art to doing a perfect DUI case. It's very difficult, and defense attorneys make their living off that stuff. So if you mess up one thing, it's out. So within law enforcement, there are those segments of fields of expertise that if you're open, you can find that niche that really kind of interests you.
Nice. That's one of the big things that Murray and I are trying to convey as a kind of a theme or a message on this show is we're just two normal guys. We're not experts in business or anything like that, but we made a conscious decision that we were going to not just give in and have that good paying career and make money, but we wanted to do something we were passionate about, and we decided to do it. And we've taken some heat for doing the podcast and all this stuff, but there's going to be some haters out there. But like you said, like you prove that it doesn't matter how old you are, find your passion, let your passion find you. You're going to be much happier, even if you're not making a huge paycheck or whatever, as long as you're doing something you enjoy.
Yep, and it'll come through. And like you said, there'll always be haters, but you do your job well. Surprisingly enough, not all of them, but a lot of them come around, and not that you're looking to earn their respect, but you end up having their respect.
Yeah, for sure.
There's something to be said for being very good at what you do. And I think the only way you can be very good at what you do is if you love it. You can't fake it.
Definitely. Yeah, that's well said. Can't argue with that.
Yeah, perfect. Well, on that, Detective Miranda, you've been an absolute pleasure to have on here. You've provided so much value. We appreciate you. The listeners appreciate you. Everyone, please stay safe out there. Support one another. We'll get through this. Just stay positive, be upbeat, and again, support one another. And with that, we'll sign off, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Really quick, before we close it down, Detective Miranda, do you want to give any shout-outs or any plugs, any service announcements, anything?
I really love what you guys are doing, and I really wish you the best of success in the future. And, ride through the rough times right now and just keep with it. I think you've got a good product out there.
Well, thank you, sir. Can't thank you enough for coming on here. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
See you later.
Hey, don't shut us off just yet. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app. We are on all of them. We have new episodes coming out each week. Don't forget to check out Murray's website at fullvolumesolutions.com. Check him out on Facebook at Full Volume Solutions. Check out my website at tacticalattorney.com, Facebook, The Tactical Attorney, and don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, The Tactical Attorney. Last but not least, I want to give a shout out to my boys Brett, Blake, Max, and everyone in the Mitten Refugees group. Thanks for the support, guys. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.